Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the State of the Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Tyler. Big news dropped today. Jalen Hurts signed a 5-year, $255 million extension. What does this mean for Lamar Jackson? We're going to get into it today for you. So Jalen Hurts just inked his new 5-year deal with the Eagles today. 5 years, $255 million, a hair under 180, fully guaranteed. And it even has the possibility to reach an extra $15 million in incentives to bring it up to $270. What a big deal for a quarterback who just came off his first Super Bowl appearance, and if he played in those last 2 regular season games, likely would have been the league MVP this past season. What does this mean for Lamar Jackson, though? Honestly, this deal should bring both sides, Lamar and the Ravens, back to the negotiating table and use this as a baseline. This deal has put Hurts at the top of league average per year for quarterbacks, all positions in general, at $51 million a year. And it also placed him, I believe it was third in fully guaranteed money at signing, behind, of course, Deshaun Watson and then Russell Wilson. That 180 figure is going to be a huge determining factor with Lamar. We see a quarterback with a similar skill set to Lamar, a little bit younger, a little bit less experience in the league is landing. This should be the baseline for a Lamar Jackson contract extension. I believe the Ravens and Lamar should just come together, take this deal, add a couple million to it here or there, and just bump him up, put him at the top of Hurts of what he just signed. I think if both sides just add a little bit of extra on top of this deal, they can just copy paste it and give it to Lamar. That way you put him at the top of the yearly averages, and then you also put him in the third place mark for that guaranteed money. I think if you do something along the lines of a $260 million and then $200 guaranteed, I think that could get the job done. Nobody truly knows exactly what Lamar is asking for, though. That's the issue in this whole process. Everything's been kind of close-knit, behind closed doors. No one's really budging either way. And the news that is coming out, no one knows what to believe just based on all the crazy happenings that's been going on with Lamar Jackson this offseason. From the Ken Francis situation to him saying he was going to release an interview with himself at some point, but still hasn't come out. Nobody knows what's truly going on behind the doors. But that being said, based on what we have been hearing, the relationship between the two sides is still intact. There's no bad blood between the two sides, so there's no reason why a deal couldn't still be worked out. I don't think the only option is going to be for him to be traded or another team sign him. I also think that's evident with the Ravens going ahead and signing OBJ. I don't think OBJ would be coming here as well if he wasn't assured that Lamar Jackson would be his quarterback. I think that's also why a 1-year deal was done. So at the very, very least, Lamar will be playing out on his tag this year. And then both players have the opportunity to land elsewhere next year, if that's just so what happens. I still believe Lamar will be a Raven long term. I just think it's just taking a lot longer than normal. This is a very unusual process, but I think it will end up being hammered out in the end. Reports also surfaced that Lamar Jackson told the Ravens front office that he wanted OBJ as well as DeAndre Hopkins before he would even consider a deal. Well, they went out and signed one of them so far. Is there still an opportunity for us to grab DeAndre Hopkins as well? I think it's a little unlikely now that OBJ is there, especially with that cap hit, but there is ways to work around it like they did with Odell's contract. Like they added void years to Odell's. Say we do trade for DeAndre Hopkins, why not add a couple more void years on his? Yeah, that's going to put us in a very, very tight predicament yet next year with a bunch of dead money coming if we don't re-sign those guys. If it helps you sign Lamar long-term, is that not a good investment? Some would disagree, some would agree. I think it would be, just so that way you have your quarterback of the future locked down. If you invest in your guy now, it will help you keep him long-term. There's also the option that the Cardinals, depending on what draft capital you send them, could eat up some of that cap space. I think everybody knows they're not contending next year, especially with a bunch of star players either retiring or asking to be traded like Buda Baker. I think if you gave them enough draft capital or enough players, enough assets, they would eat up some of that cap space, so that way it makes a deal a little bit easier to negotiate. That being said, if we trade them our first round pick, but we get D-Hop and a second, or D-Hop and a third back, I don't think that's a horrible deal, because basically you're sending your first round pick to get a very serviceable receiver, and then have the Cardinals take away that cap hit for us, so that way we can manage all that under our cap space. There's a lot of tricks that the front office can do to be able to make things work. There's also the option of grabbing Lamar more weapons through the draft. The draft is in about a week and a half at the time of this recording, and no one knows truly what we would do with the first round pick. We've only got 5 picks total in the draft, which is a very minuscule amount compared to what we normally have and what the front office normally likes working with. Just in the last draft alone, we had 6 picks in the 4th round. So that just goes to tell you how little we have this year. So that opens up numerous possibilities for that first overall pick. One, if Lamar Jackson isn't going to re-sign and you're very doubtful about his future with the team, and a quarterback is available there, do you go quarterback? Do you try trading up to get one of those star quarterbacks in the first round? The class this year seems very good, and there's a consensus that 2 or 3 of them will be star quarterbacks in this league. I also think there's some good guys later in the draft that you could be able to grab and then be able to develop into starting caliber quarterbacks in this league. You also have the option of getting Lamar even more weapons and try to convince him to sign long term. What if one of those top receivers like Jordan Addison or a Quentin Johnson are available? Would they go after them? And then you also have a bunch of the defensive guys that you know they love stocking up on. Marcus Peters isn't back, so you still have guys like Cam Smith and Joey Porter Jr. available that we might be able to go after. And then there's also just trading down, grabbing as many picks as possible. We got a lot of holes in this team now, especially with some veterans going away, like Calais Campbell. So why not stock up on a bunch of picks and try to fill as many holes as you can this year and get some quality depth players. But there's a ton of options for the Ravens in this draft for players all across the board. If we are going to try to go quarterback later in the draft, I wouldn't mind seeing us grab Malik Cunningham from Louisville, the predecessor to Lamar Jackson, or even Hendon Hooker if he's available. I know his stock has been rising a little bit, but that ACL tear could have him fall just a tad and might be able to trade back into the second round, maybe even high 3rd round. I think it would most likely be second round, but why not draft him and let him learn a year under Lamar if he does play on that tag. The one option I just would not like us to see us go is Stetson Bennett. I know there's that connection with Georgia and Todd Monken, but he's already ancient. I'm not trying to see us try to develop an old quarterback and fall into that Brandon Weeden trap from years and years ago. And then I also think you have quality receivers deeper in the draft as well. You got the 2 Maryland guys that are going to be late round draft picks, and Dante Demas and Raheem Jarrett. I think either one of them could turn into serviceable role players if you put them under the right training regimen in the offseason. I know that's asking for a lot, especially from this Ravens team that has not been able to develop wide receivers and has never drafted a Pro Bowl wide receiver. But you never know. It could just be a special talent that you can find late in the draft that just turns things around. There's also going to be Tank Dell later in the draft as well, out of Houston. I think his footwork is phenomenal, and I think if you pair him, Rashad Bateman, Odell Beckham, you'd have some of the best route running you'd ever see in this league paired up together. Defensively, there's a lot of depth all around. There's some good corners that I think we would go after round 1 if we do stick there. I don't really want to see us go corner first round, but there are definitely some stud players top of the board. But that's about all the analysis for today. Went over Jalen Hurts' contract affecting Lamar Jackson and how that's going to speed along a deal, hopefully, in the coming weeks, and about how Lamar Jackson's situation will affect us in the draft. I've been your host, Tyler, and thank you for listening.